Norman Greenbaum wrote a song called Spirit in the Sky in about 15 minutes back in 1969, and he has said he hasn't had to work a real job since. That single song still lands him a steady paycheck every time it shows up in a movie or a commercial more than 50 years later. So today, we're counting down 12 one-hit wonders from 60s and 70s that still earn millions decades later. Number 12, Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles.
Video killed the radio star.
Trevor Horn, Jeff Downes, and Bruce Woolley wrote this song together in about an hour in 1978, and the Buggles' recording of it became a modest UK number 1 and a barely there American hit, peaking at only number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December 1979. Its real payday came almost 2 years later, when MTV chose it as the very first music video to air on the new network at 12:01 a.m. on August 1st, 1981. A decision made largely because the video's futuristic visuals, full of silver jumpsuits and glowing screens, fit the channel's forward-looking image better than any of the era's bigger hits. That single placement turned the song into a permanent piece of broadcasting history, guaranteeing it airtime every time anyone produces a retrospective about music videos, cable television, or the 1980s in general.
They took the credit for your second symphony.
Bruce Woolley, who left the group before its single hit stores in favor of pursuing his own recording career, still receives half of the songwriting royalties from the track after winning a coin toss with his former bandmates to settle the credit split. Trevor Horn went on to become one of the most successful record producers in history, working with acts like Yes, Seal, and Frankie Goes to Hollywood, while Jeff Downes co-founded the supergroup Asia. Bruce Woolley went on to form his own band, the Camera Club, featuring a young Thomas Dolby on keyboards, before returning to session and production work. Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes later joined the progressive rock band Yes in 1980, replacing John Anderson and Rick Wakeman for one album, before Downes left to co-found the supergroup Asia. Horn eventually earned a reputation as one of the most influential producers of the following decade, sometimes nicknamed the man who invented the 80s sound. Decades later, the song still earns steady money through documentaries, streaming placements, and MTV's own frequent nostalgia programming built around its own origin story.
Video killed the radio star.
Number 11, Feels So Good by Chuck Mangione. Chuck Mangione was a respected jazz trumpeter and flugelhorn player with a handful of minor chart entries when this smooth, largely instrumental single unexpectedly climbed to number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of 1978, an almost unheard-of feat for an instrumental jazz recording. The song sold over 2 million copies and topped Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart, and it remained the only mainstream pop crossover of a long career that otherwise stayed firmly rooted in the jazz world. Its second life came decades later when the animated series King of the Hill, running from 1997 to 2010, gave Mangione a recurring guest role as an exaggerated version of himself, working as a reluctant celebrity spokesperson who couldn't help but play snippets of the song no matter what else he was asked to perform. The joke introduced the song to an entirely new generation of viewers who had never heard the original 1978 recording. It also turned up in the 2016 Marvel film Doctor Strange, playing during a brain surgery scene, keeping the licensing income flowing well into Mangione's later years. Mangione had actually charted 4 other minor singles on the Hot 100 over the course of his career, including Chase the Clouds Away, which was used during the 1976 Summer Olympics broadcast in Montreal, and Give It All You Got. performed live at the closing ceremony of the 1980 Winter Games in Lake Placid. He also won 2 competitive Grammy Awards during his career, one for the album Balavia in 1977 and another for his Children of Sanchez soundtrack the following year. Guitarist Grant Geisman, who played the memorable guitar solo on the original recording, remained a working session musician for decades afterward. Mangione continued receiving new royalty checks from film, television, and streaming placements right up until his death in July 2025 at the age of 84. Number 10, Play That Funky Music by Wild Cherry. Rob Parisi wrote this song for his Ohio-based band, Wild Cherry, allegedly inspired by a heckler in a club audience who shouted at the mostly white group to play something funkier, and it shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in September 1976. The single eventually sold roughly 2.5 million copies in the United States and earned platinum certification from the RIAA, on top of a UK platinum certification added decades later in 2022 once streaming numbers were folded into the count. Its biggest second act came in 1989, when a young rapper named Vanilla Ice built his own song of the same title around an obvious uncleared sample of the original. Parisi wasn't credited on the release, and after a copyright dispute, he was awarded a settlement reported at $500,000, along with an ongoing songwriting credit on Ice's version. That track alone introduced the song to millions of new listeners heading into the 1990s. Wild Cherry had actually started out as a struggling hard rock band in Ohio before the funk pivot turned their fortunes around almost overnight, and the single also reached number 2 on the Cashbox chart that same year, arriving right in the middle of the disco boom, despite not being a disco record itself. As of recent counts taken in late 2025, the original recording has also passed more than 350 million streams on Spotify alone, and it continues to show up regularly in commercials, films, and even television shows like The Big Bang Theory, looking for an instantly recognizable slice of 1970s funk. Number 9, Rock the Boat by the Hughes Corporation. Songwriter Wally Holmes wrote this song in about 15 minutes for his vocal trio, describing a relationship through the extended metaphor of a ship on the ocean, and it was quietly released in early 1974 before catching fire in New York City's disco and gay club scene, months ahead of mainstream radio catching on. Once top 40 stations finally picked it up, Rock the Boat climbed all the way to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in July 1974, becoming one of the earliest true disco songs to top the American charts, years before the genre's full mainstream explosion later in the decade. The Hughes Corporation never came close to matching that success again, charting only a few more minor entries before disbanding in 1977, but the song itself has barely slowed down since.
So I'd like to know where you got the notion.
It has been licensed for M&M's candy commercials, appeared in the 1999 Andy Kaufman biopic Man on the Moon, and turned up in television shows including The Simpsons, The Sopranos, The West Wing, and, as recently as March 2024, an episode of the drama 911. The Hughes Corporation itself had formed back in 1969 in Santa Monica, taking its name as a pun on the Howard Hughes business empire, and the group even returned to the song decades later, releasing a 2021 collaboration called Rock the Boat for Love alongside Master G of the Sugar Hill Gang. That kind of steady placement across 5 decades of film and television, spanning everything from network sitcoms to prestige cable dramas to first-run streaming shows, has kept the song's licensing income flowing long after most listeners forgot the band's name.
I don't rock the boat, baby. Rock the boat.
Number 8, Hooked on a Feeling by Blue Swede.
Hooked on a feeling.
This song was originally a hit for B.J. Thomas in 1968, but the version most people know today came from the Swedish band Blue Swede, led by singer Björn Skifs, who borrowed the chanted introduction from an earlier British cover and rode the song to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1974. It became the band's only major American hit, even though the song had already existed in several earlier forms before Blue Swede got hold of it. The song resurfaced in Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs in 1992, and again as the memorable dancing baby theme on the sitcom Ally McBeal in the late 1990s. But its biggest financial windfall came in 2014, when Marvel used it prominently in the first trailer for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Lips as sweet as candy.
Digital sales of the song spiked by roughly 700% within a single day of the trailer's release in February 2014, and once the movie's soundtrack, Awesome Mix Volume 1, arrived that August, it shot straight to number 1 on the Billboard 200 Albums chart, selling well over 100,000 copies in a single week, an extraordinary feat for a compilation built almost entirely around decades-old singles. The original 1968 B.J. Thomas version had already reached number 5 on the Hot 100 with a similar electric sitar-driven arrangement, and Blue Swede notched one more American hit later that same year with Never My Love, which peaked at number 7, though nothing else in their catalog came close to matching the success of their signature cover. The song remains a fixture of Marvel's marketing for the franchise to this day.
That you're in love with me.
Number 7, Kung Fu Fighting by Carl Douglas.
I was kung fu fighting.
Carl Douglas wrote this song in about 10 minutes as a throwaway B-side, based loosely on watching two boys kickboxing on a London street, and it was only released as the A-side after a record executive at Pi Records insisted on the swap at the last minute. Timed almost perfectly with a wave of martial arts films sweeping through theaters after Bruce Lee's death the previous year, it shot to number 1 in the United States, the United Kingdom, and at least 7 other countries during the fall of 1974. The song went on to sell an estimated 11 million copies worldwide, placing it among the best-selling singles of all time anywhere in the world. And by the end of that same year, it had reportedly generated around $2 million in royalties for Douglas and his producer, Biddu, alone, an enormous sum for the era that neither of them had any reason to expect from a track originally meant to be forgotten on the back of a record.
Funky Chinaman from funky Chinatown.
It has continued earning steadily ever since, appearing in films including Bowfinger, Shaolin Soccer, and Kung Fu Panda, the last of which featured a cover version by CeeLo Green. Douglas had scored only minor UK chart entries before this song, including a modest hit called Crazy Feeling back in 1964, and his official follow-up single, Dance the Kung Fu, never managed to crack the American Top 40 despite the momentum of his first hit. The song also won Jukebox Soul Record of the Year at the 1975 Amusement and Music Operators Association Awards for being the most played soul record on jukeboxes across the country that year. A 1998 dance remix by the British act Bus Stop, built around Douglas's original vocals, gave the song yet another chart run and another round of licensing income decades after its original release.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Number 6, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl by Looking Glass.
On a western bay and it serves.
Elliot Lurie wrote this song about a fictional barmaid who pines for a sailor who chose the sea over her, a fully invented character despite decades of rumors linking her to a real 18th century woman, penned for his New Jersey rock band, Looking Glass. and it reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the late summer of 1972, selling more than 1 million copies and earning a gold record. The band never had another hit close to that size, managing only one minor follow-up called Jimmy Loves Mary Ann, and Lurie eventually left music altogether for a career as a film and television music supervisor, working on projects like Clueless, Stuart Little, and Alien 3. The song refused to fade, turning up over the decades in shows including The Simpsons, The King of Queens, and The Wire. Its biggest resurgence came in 2017, when director James Gunn built the entire opening sequence of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 around it, with a character on screen calling it possibly Earth's finest composition. The song's popularity even briefly influenced American baby naming trends, with Brandy jumping from the 353rd most popular name for girls in 1971 to 82nd by 1973. And it indirectly led Barry Manilow to rename his own similarly titled song, originally also called Brandy, to Mandy in 1974 to avoid confusion between the two hits. The rest of Looking Glass went on to form the glam rock band Stars after Lurie's departure. That placement introduced Brandy to an enormous new audience of moviegoers who had likely never heard of Looking Glass, and it continues to generate significant licensing income for Lurie and his former bandmates to this day. Number 5, Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. Norman Greenbaum wrote this gospel-flavored rock song in about 15 minutes, inspired partly by old Western movies and the idea of wanting to die with his boots on, despite being Jewish himself and having no particular religious agenda behind the lyrics. Released in December 1969, it sold roughly 2 million copies and reached #1 in several countries the following year. What has made the song remarkable financially is its afterlife. It has appeared in more than 50 movies and over 30 commercials, including placements in Apollo 13, Ocean's 11, and Guardians of the Galaxy, along with ads for brands like Gatorade and Kellogg's brand flakes. Greenbaum has said publicly that he essentially doesn't have to work because of the steady 6-figure income the song still generates every year through licensing and royalties. Estimates of his total career earnings from the song alone run well into the millions of dollars. Before this song, Greenbaum had briefly found novelty success with an earlier band called Dr. West's Medicine Show and Junk Band, best known for a quirky single called The Eggplant That Ate Chicago. He briefly returned to farming and odd jobs in the years after his fame faded, but the song's enduring popularity with music supervisors kept pulling him back into the public eye decade after decade, including a memorable use during the In Memoriam segment of the 2022 Academy Awards ceremony. Greenbaum survived a serious car accident in 2015 and continued performing occasionally in the years that followed. Number 4, Sugar, Sugar by the Archies. This bubblegum pop song was co-written by Jeff Barry and Andy Kim for a cartoon band based on the Archie comic book characters, with the actual vocals recorded by session singers Ron Dante and Tony Wine, rather than any real on-screen performers. Released in the summer of 1969, it knocked the Rolling Stones' Honky Tonk Women out of the top spot on the Billboard Hot 100 and went on to be named the best-selling single of the entire year, beating out far more critically acclaimed records by artists who had far longer careers. Because the song was tied to an ongoing entertainment franchise rather than a single band, it has continued generating licensing income far beyond what most one-hit wonders see, through Archie Comics merchandise, the long-running Riverdale television series, and a 2023 Netflix musical film adaptation set in India.
You are my candy girl.
The entire concept began when producer Don Kirshner, frustrated after Monkees member Mike Nesmith rejected one of his songs, decided to build a cartoon band instead, so no performer could ever again say no to a hit record. The song spent 4 weeks at #1, and its ties to the ongoing Archie Comics franchise kept it commercially relevant long after most one-hit wonders would have faded, including a 2023 Netflix musical film adaptation directed by Zoya Akhtar and set in India. The song itself has also been covered by artists including Tom Jones, Wilson Pickett, and Tina Turner, and by recent counts, it has been streamed more than 300 million times across platforms like Spotify and YouTube, keeping royalties flowing to its songwriters and performers alike.
You got me wanting you.
Number 3, Nana Hey Hey, Kiss Him Goodbye by Steam. This song began as a quickly written B-side needed for a different track by singer Gary DiCarlo, credited to a band called Steam that didn't actually exist as a touring group when the record was first pressed, and it still reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December 1969. Its real financial engine turned out to be sports, not radio. In 1977, Chicago White Sox organist Nancy Faust started playing the song's chorus on the ballpark organ during a game against the Kansas City Royals to taunt opposing players being pulled from the field, and the chant quickly spread to stadiums and arenas across nearly every professional sport in North America. Decades later, it remains one of the most widely used taunting anthems in sports history, generating ongoing performance royalties every single time it's played over a stadium sound system, which by now numbers in the tens of thousands of instances across baseball, hockey, basketball, and beyond. The song was written years earlier by DiCarlo, Paul Lika, and Dale Frashuer as a simple blues shuffle originally called Just Kiss Him Goodbye, and the now famous chant was only added the night it was finally recorded for release. By the 21st century, sales of the song had surpassed 6.5 million copies, pushing it to multi-platinum status decades after its initial run on the charts. White Sox fans famously adopted the chant during the team's 1983 playoff run, further cementing its place in stadium culture. DiCarlo, who received 1/3 of the songwriting royalties despite never touring with the group that made the song famous, continued collecting checks from the song for the rest of his life until his death in 2017. Number 2, MacArthur Park by Richard Harris.
MacArthur Park is melting in the dark.
Songwriter Jimmy Webb originally wrote this sprawling 7-minute song for the pop group The Association, who turned it down for being too strange, before Irish actor Richard Harris, fresh off starring in the film Camelot, recorded it for his own 1968 debut album and wrote it to #2 on the Billboard Hot 100, remaining the only major hit of his singing career. A decade later, Donna Summer's disco reinterpretation, produced by Giorgio Moroder and Pete Bellotte, and stretched to nearly 18 minutes on her original album before being trimmed for radio, became a bigger hit still, reaching #1 in November 1978 and becoming the only Jimmy Webb composition ever to top the American charts. Between the two versions, the song has now been covered more than 200 times by artists ranging from Frank Sinatra to Tony Bennett to Weird Al Yankovic,
I recall the yellow cotton dress.
generating a steady stream of royalties for Webb across every single new recording released. Webb had originally written the song at the request of producer Bones Howe for the pop group The Association, who rejected it outright for being too unconventional, with its unusual structure and surreal lyrics about a cake left out in the rain. A line Webb has said he has been asked to explain literally 1,000,000 times over the years. Waylon Jennings even won a Grammy for his own 1969 country version of the song, recorded with the vocal group The Kimberleys. The song found yet another audience in 2024 through its prominent use in the film Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and again in 2026, when figure skater Elisa Liu won Olympic gold skating to Donna Summer's version, sending the recording back to the top of digital sales charts more than 50 years after Harris first recorded it.
And I'll never have the recipe again.
Number 1, Wild Thing by the Troggs.
Wild thing.
Songwriter Chip Taylor, the brother of actor Jon Voight and uncle of Angelina Jolie, wrote this song in 1965 for a New York band called the Wild Ones, whose version went nowhere before it eventually reached the Troggs in England. Recorded in a single take at Olympic Sound Studios in London, it shot to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in the summer of 1966, becoming the band's only major American hit, even though they did manage one more modest UK hit 2 years later with Love Is All Around. The song has proven to be one of the most licensed pieces of music from that entire decade, most famously serving as the entrance theme for Charlie Sheen's character, Rick Wild Thing Vaughn, in the 1989 baseball film Major League, a connection so strong that real Major League relief pitchers, including Mitch Williams during the 1993 World Series, began using the song for their own bullpen entrances.
But I wanna know for sure.
The Troggs took their name from the word troglodyte, meaning cave dweller, embracing a deliberately primitive image that matched the song's raw, 3-chord sound. Jimi Hendrix famously covered the song at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967, ending his performance by setting his guitar on fire, and Trog frontman Reg Presley later used his songwriting royalties to help fund research into crop circles for the rest of his life. It has also appeared in commercials for products ranging from cars to a 2019 French perfume campaign starring Angelina Jolie, Chip Taylor's own niece, and it was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2019, ensuring its royalties keep flowing in from movies, sports arenas, and advertising alike nearly 60 years after it was recorded.
I love you.
12 songs, 12 artists who mostly never had another hit anywhere close to that size. And yet all 12 tracks are still quietly cashing checks decades after they first climbed the charts, thanks to movies, commercials, sports arenas, and a whole new generation discovering them through streaming platforms nobody could have imagined back then. It's proof that a great 3-minute song can outlast almost anything else in the entertainment business. If any of these songs surprised you with how much staying power they still have, let us know which one in the comments. And if you enjoyed this look at music's most successful one-hit wonders, give this video a like and subscribe for more stories from the golden age of radio, since there are always more surprising royalty checks still being cashed out there.